Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Today, we are joined by Todd Villarrubia, who is an attorney and the owner and managing partner of Wealth Planning Law Group. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Adrian. It's really an honor.
I'm glad you're here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about Wealth Planning Law Group?
Sure. So for over 30 years, my law firm, Wealth Planning Law Group, we've helped thousands of entrepreneurs protect billions of dollars from the government, taxes, and creditors.
Wow.
I'm a tax attorney and a board certified expert in estate planning. There's only about 100 of us in all of Louisiana. I'm an accredited estate planner with the National Association of Estate Planning Councils. I'm also a certified exit planning advisor, so we help anything to do with money. We help set up the legal structures to help people protect it, basically.
Can you tell me a little bit about some of the pain points and problems that businesses are experiencing when they come to you and come to Wealth Planning Law Group?
Yeah, we've actually created a whole series of presentations called what we call entrepreneurial beast mode. And the BEAST is an acronym for business planning, estate planning, asset protection planning, succession planning, and then taxation. And what I find, our ideal clients are business owners with 5 or more employees, all the way up to hundreds of employees, and high net worth individuals that a lot of whom haven't done really proper planning, frankly. And I think it centers around, tax planning because, there's not that many tax attorneys in the country, and a lot of the lay public doesn't realize that their CPA doesn't really know as much about the tax code, frankly, as the tax lawyers do in the country.
Right.
And then, I think from tax, it goes to estate planning. There's a lot of people, 40% of the public has a will, but the other 60% doesn't. And of the 40% that have a will, what we find is that a lot of them have gone to a non-specialist attorney and their documents are really lacking, frankly, or they haven't been updated in years. Then we usually go to succession planning because, business owners often don't have buy-sell agreements in place. There's been some pretty, substantial changes in the law with buy-sell planning just in the last year with the Connolly decision, for example, that really impacts a certain type of buy-sell arrangement. And then tax, it's asset protection is always a major issue because, when clients are younger, they're trying to grow their wealth, but as they get older, protecting that wealth becomes even more important. So it's really a combination of all those things: asset protection, estate planning, business planning, succession planning, and taxes.
Right, that beast mode.
Yeah.
Well, and can you tell us a little bit about some of the common mistakes that you see people making when it comes to their estate planning documents?
Sure. What we find is that a lot of people fail to go to an expert. That's the first thing. I always tell
Right.
people, you don't have to go to me, but go to somebody that is, has been doing this for decades, that has kind of seen everything, because estate planning for an entrepreneur is very different than estate planning for a W-2 employee. They've got different mindsets. There's different, there's a lot more complexity usually. And one of the big mistakes is that they'll go to their friend who's an attorney that might do a little bit of business law and might do a little bit of bankruptcy and might do a little bit of personal injury, as opposed to going to somebody that's got a master's degree in tax law or that is a board certified expert in estate planning or tax. And we see all sorts of mistakes. I've represented people and that, are well known in the community, that just about everybody would know, that frankly their will was done by a non-specialist, and the will was so bad that they would have actually been better off without a will.
Mm.
And I see people do that. They'll go to these online kind of things and try to do a will, and you're just not going to get the quality. You get what you pay for in life, and I think most successful entrepreneurs realize that if it costs cheap, then you're probably getting a less value and less protective. And the problem is that you're an entrepreneur selling widgets. You don't know whether the documents are any good, and
Right.
you're not going to find out until you die, and by then it's too late.
Right.
So we've seen a lot of people, and you read stories, even Supreme Court justices who had wills that really weren't well done. And I'm very proud of the fact that over 30 years of practice, I've done thousands of transactions, and not one of mine has ever been overturned by a court or the IRS or an heir
Wow.
or a divorcing spouse. We're very proud of the work that we do. So we're not the cheapest law firm around, but when you work with us, you get peace of mind of knowing that it's going to be done correctly.
That's a pretty incredible statistic over all the 30 years career?
30 years of practice, absolutely. Very
Wow.
proud of that.
And in those 30 years, can you tell me sort of what changes you have seen in the estate planning space and how your approach has maybe evolved over those 30 years?
I would say there's two big things that have changed. One is the estate taxation. When I was a younger attorney, we had Louisiana inheritance tax, and I think there's still 13 states that still have a death tax on the books.
Mm.
Louisiana, thank goodness, doesn't any longer. And then the federal estate tax has changed really radically since I've started practicing, back in the 90s. Back then, the exemption was only $600,000. So if you were a business owner that owned a business and owned your house and had a retirement account, you probably had a federal estate tax problem.
Mm.
When Trump got in office the first time, he doubled the estate tax exemption, and now it's the highest it's ever been. It's almost $14
Wow.
million. So for most small business owners, they're not going to have a federal estate tax. But for those people that are above 14 million, then obviously it's a major issue. It's actually the highest tax in the code. It's at 40%.
Wow.
And what people don't realize is that everything's included. So your business, the equity in your home, even the life insurance death benefit. Most people think, oh, well, life insurance, I only have to include the cash value. But for
Right.
estate tax purposes, if I have a $20 million term policy with no cash value, I have an estate tax problem. The second big change that I've seen is that when I do see other people's trusts, a lot of times they would have what we call ages and stages, which the idea is that, at 25, my kid gets a third. At age 30, they get half. And then at 35, they get the balance. And the concept is, well, let me give the kid a little bit of money while they're young. And if they blow it, then we still save some. But
Right.
frankly, I think it's poor planning, because people do these kind of wills when they're only worth maybe $1 million. Down the road,
Mm.
they're worth 20 million. And if you've got
Right.
two kids, that's 10 million each. Do you really want your 25-year-old coming into a third of $10 million when they reach 25?
Right.
And the answer is usually no. So we like to do maximum asset protection. So we always use trust. B, we make them fully discretionary, so that you appoint a good trustee, but you don't force distributions out. And then C, we like to make the trust go for as long as possible. So in a lot of states, that's only the lifetime of the kids plus 21 years. But there's other jurisdictions that we use because we have clients around the country, and we can set up a Delaware dynasty trust, for example,
Mm.
that literally goes on for a multitude of generations. And when we do that, it can literally save the family tens of millions of dollars
Wow.
in estate taxes, not to mention asset protection. we live in the most litigious country in the world. And, we all see all these personal injury attorneys and the lawsuits that get filed for frivolous reasons. Well, by using trust, we can actually protect all of those assets that you've worked so hard for the rest of your life.
Right. Well, and that was kind of leading into my next question. Was I was wondering, with all of these recent changes to the estate tax laws, what are some of the things that, people can do to sort of ensure their assets are protected?
Well, again, I think it starts with always using trust, whether, that's a revocable trust to avoid probate that can turn irrevocable when you die, or whether it's a testamentary trust that's contained inside your will. The use of dynasty trusts make a lot of sense as well. We can actually get 3 times as much money to the third generation as if you don't use a dynasty trust. And frankly, we're in interesting times right now. There's actually a bill before Congress to eliminate the estate tax. So
Mm,
a lot of people are thinking to themselves, I think incorrectly, hey, we're scot free. If they pass this bill, we're not going to have an estate tax. But there's a couple of things. The estate tax has been around since 1913. So it's been around for over 110 years, and it's actually been eliminated and brought back on 6 different occasions, as
wow.
recently as 2010. So any bill that they pass is by definition only going to last a short period of time because of some complex budgetary rules that are in place. We don't know how long this new bill, if one passes, is going to, be in effect. And we do know that 4 years from now, President Trump's not going to be president any longer, and then
Right.
we have a new administration. When Kamala Harris was running, you know, right now again we're at almost $14 million exemption. She was talking about a $3.5 million exemption. So if the Democrats get reelected, the chances of this exemption going down or reinstating the estate tax, I think, goes way up.
Yeah.
We have a family we're working with right now. That mom, she's a widow. She's already used about 7.5 million of her exemption. She's only got about 6.5 left, but she's worth about $13 million. And I told them about the new law, but they're still moving forward because they want to make sure that this thing's knocked out once and for all, as opposed to taking a chance and saying, well, maybe this law will be around when I die,
Right.
maybe it won't. So I think being proactive with it when you have a lot of wealth
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Todd, can you do me a favor? Somehow your camera
Oh,
it got vertically oriented. I don't know if you seen that. There you
there we
go.
go.
Cool. There we are. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It got
The end of
vertically
the world as
oriented
we
for
know it,
some
I guess.
reason.
I don't know what happened.
But I was wondering, so I mean, with estate planning, can you describe for us? I mean, are there some common misconceptions that you see people sort of have or belief, common misbeliefs about the estate planning space that you see people holding that you'd like to clear up?
Yeah, again, I think people that think that they can go
Oh,
online.
you got vertical again. I don't know what happened here. It's so strange.
I don't know if it's a software issue. I'm not really sure how to. I can try to turn it.
Oh, now we've lost them all together.
Hold tight.
Yeah, you're good. There you go. There
I
you
don't know
go.
why.
Perfect.
Something to do with the software. I've never had that happen before.
But yeah, to continue, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Some common misconceptions that you'd like to clear up about estate planning.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people they'll go online, and there's software vendors out there that sell these low cost wills. And I just I've seen some of it, and quite honestly, especially for entrepreneurs that have more complex situations, don't be penny wise and pound foolish.
Right.
You get what you pay for. And if you go, and take a chance on this, you're not going to know that it's messed up until you die, and it's too late then. And then you're going to leave your family with a mess. We know a couple of things. We know, number one, unfortunately, the good Lord's coming for all of us. Number
Right.
two, we know that none of us know when that's going to happen. and you're either going to have a good plan in place or not. And again, over 50% of Americans don't have a plan in place. So getting a proper plan, doing it the right way, you're going to get what you pay for. It's just like getting a car. If you go get an old clunker, you're going to have all sorts of problems and it's going to be
Right.
breaking down all the time. You get a nice quality car that's going to last you and get you where you need to go and get your family there safely. You don't want to put this burden on your kids and your spouse by doing something, half-ass, excuse my French.
Can you share with us a little bit about what charitable planning is and how you integrate it into your clients' estate plans? And what are
Yeah.
some of the advantages of charitable planning?
So we love doing charitable planning, and there's all sorts of structures that we set up, everything from donor advised funds to charitable remainder trusts, charitable lead trusts, private foundations. And, at least under the current tax code, there are substantial benefits to using these charitable vehicles that we use. And it's not just the tax benefits, it's the fact that a lot of our clients, once they achieve a certain level of wealth, they really want to start making an impact in the world, and they can do that through their charitable gifting. And in particular, we've set up just dozens and dozens of private foundations for well-off families where the family can actually be indoctrinated with the founder's kind of core vision and values so that they can give back to the community but still kind of control the money going forward. But it works for so many clients, clients that are looking to reduce their income tax bills. We have clients that are heavily invested in real estate that have depreciated their real estate over time that realize that if they sell that real estate, they're going to get hit with a big capital gains tax, sometimes some recapture of ordinary income tax. They're going to get hit with estate taxes sometimes.
Mm.
So by using charitable remainder trust, for example, we can avoid the income taxes and the charitable gain taxes and the estate taxes and still get the client a pretty substantial income tax deduction as well. So there's a lot of strong tax and non-tax reasons for doing charitable planning.
When you are figuring out your strategy, your approach to an estate plan for a client, is it sort of a one size fits all approach, or is your strategy sort of custom tailored to suit the needs of each individual?
It's a great question, Adrian. So literally every single plan that we design is custom designed for the client.
Mm.
As you might imagine, every client's family information's different, their asset breakdowns are different,
Right.
their goals and objectives are different. So every single plan that we do, whether it's a foundational plan with a will, living will, general power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, or whether it's more advanced planning with revocable living trust, dynasty trusts, we set up domestic asset protection trusts, family limited partnerships. We do all sorts of high end planning. It's all custom designed, for the unique needs of that family.
And it's interesting because you'd almost, I mean, it almost would have to be custom tailored. I mean, that makes perfect sense. But I'm wondering, what does that discovery phase look like where you're gathering all that information about those clients? Is that a pretty lengthy discovery phase?
I tell people that they're looking at only about 5 hours of investable time. If
Mm.
they can give us 5 hours, then we can get it done. And really, the first hour is we have a pretty comprehensive online confidential intake sheet, much
Mm.
like you do when you go to a doctor's office. And it lays out all the family information, all the asset breakdowns, the goals and concerns and objectives of the family. And once I get that filled out, I've got a pretty good idea of what the client needs at that point. The second hour is really the discovery call that they have with our team, and if it looks like we're a good fit for one another, they'll book a complimentary meeting with me and my paralegal. At that meeting, we'll design the plan for them and talk about the different options. We don't charge by the hour. Everything we do is on a flat value-based fee, so that the way the client knows what the investment is. If they do decide to move forward, like 85% of the people we meet with do, then we ask for half up front and half when we sign. And usually the signing meeting's about 3 to 4 weeks thereafter. So you're looking at 4 to 5 hours total investment of time, to get this done.
Do you ever encounter conflicts in estate planning? Like, say, one spouse wants one thing done and one spouse wants another thing done? I mean, I imagine you'd have to run into that occasionally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we
How
have
do you
to,
resolve those conflicts?
that's part of the art, I think, of what we do is trying to find some common ground. It's usually over the appointment of somebody to raise the kids if they got minor kids, or somebody to be the trustee. Those are the two biggest fights. And then I'll kind of explain the different pros and cons and the characteristics we're looking for in those people. And once we do that, usually there's some consensus, but sometimes there's not. And I'll tell you that we have done documents before where the husband's will says one thing and the wife's will says something different, which is
Right.
perfectly acceptable because they each have their own separate documents.
What inspired you to get into the estate planning space?
So I was really influenced a lot by some family dynamics that happened when I was a younger man. Specifically, my father, when I was a junior in high school, I was only 17 years old. He was the strongest man I've ever met. He could do 100 one-arm push-ups with each arm. Tear yellow pages in half with his bare hands, and he suffered a major catastrophic stroke and was a quadriplegic.
Oh, wow.
So he literally couldn't move below his neck. So I saw, and he had divorced, he and my mom were divorced. He had remarried to my stepmother. So there were all sorts of things that got involved with that. Because when that happens to you and you become suddenly disabled, if you don't have a power of attorney in place, then you got to go through the court system. It's time consuming. It's expensive. You have to get doctors involved. It's a long, drawn-out process that can all be avoided by doing a proper estate plan with a power of attorney. The second thing is, quite frankly, I never did quite get over the fact that my stepmother brought my father to an attorney and held my dad's hand as he signed a will to leave her most of the estate. And that was a major problem because, frankly, my dad wasn't close with her children. And I think if they would have gone to an expert, they would have never allowed that to happen,
Right.
And it was a little shady, obviously, holding his hand, that it kind of reeked of undue influence, obviously.
Right.
And then there were fights among my dad's side of the family over my grandparents' inheritance. This is all before I became a lawyer. So I was introduced really early on to a lot of ways that, frankly, a lot of problems that could have been avoided with somebody that really knew what they were doing.
And do you see that sort of undue influence, and how do you handle that when you see that come across, right? I mean, do you find yourself in that situation where you say this person is influencing this person to make these decisions, or?
Yeah, so when I have a suspicion that might be the case, we will literally take all sorts of extra measures. We will ask everybody to leave the room. We'll videotape it. I'll ask questions about capacity. I'll ask questions about undue influence. And we try to really take a belt and suspenders approach. We actually have a succession right now where mom died, and thank God we videotaped it because she excluded several of her children from their inheritance, and we've got them dead to rights because we have we literally have a video and an audio where she's clearly competent. She clearly understands who she is. She clearly understands that she could have left it to anybody, but she's intentionally leaving these kids out, and they don't have a leg to stand on. That's not to say they can't fight it. They are fighting it, but I have no doubt that we'll be successful in upholding the will.
We have someone that just chimed in to the live chat here and asks, "Hey, Todd, any other horror stories you've experienced or heard within wealth planning?"
I hate to say it, but I've seen all sorts of horror stories. I could give you two that are current. One of which is a succession. We have a gentleman that we didn't know before he died. His wife found us, and his wife and he had been married for 30 years, but he had a child from a prior marriage that he did not talk to anymore. And unfortunately, he didn't do a will. Well, guess what? The assets are going to actually pass to this child that he hasn't spoken to in decades because of the fact that he didn't do a plan. And I suspect he'd probably be rolling over in his grave knowing that right now, And even, even when we've seen wills, when there's a blended family, we've seen all sorts of horror stories with, trying to, sometimes the wife gets everything and the kids are left out. Sometimes the kids get everything and the wife's left out. And I always try to explain to my clients that it's a balancing act. Unfortunately, in today's world, we have a 50% divorce rate. So we deal with a lot of clients that have his children, her children, and their children, and balancing the rights of the different parties, the kids and the spouses, is really, again, a lot of artwork as much as it is, the technical side of the planning process.
Well, and I want to thank the live chat for that question. And I'm going to roll off of that into, we've talked about horror stories, but can you share with us a positive story where you really got or saw a positive outcome for someone as a result of your help and guidance?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you hundreds of stories, but I'll go back to, the client that I mentioned earlier that we're working with currently. She's right now she's staring down the barrel of a $4 million death tax bill.
Oh, wow.
And she's in her late 80s. So, we don't know how, hopefully she'll be around for a long time, but we just don't know. And through some fairly sophisticated planning using trusts and family limited partnership structures and discounting and all this other stuff that we do, we're literally going to save the family $4 million in death tax. And that just makes me feel so good because personally, I hate the government. I love beating the government out of money. And if I can put more money into my clients' pockets and less money into the government's pockets, man, that's why I'll do what I do for the rest of my life. You're going to have to drag me out of my law office kicking and screaming because I just love beating the government out of money.
Now, you received
legitimately, obviously. We've never had one of our clients on the front page of the Wall Street Journal improperly. So, we're not looking to do anything that's crazy. But there's so many different planning opportunities in the income tax and estate tax and capital gains tax arenas that if you just know enough about the code, and that's the problem, is most people CPAs don't.
Right.
Not knocking the CPAs. It's just that most of them have been trained just to kind of report what you give them and put the right numbers in the right boxes. They're not doing proactive planning like we do with our Roadmap to Zero tax program.
And before we wrap up here, I want to discuss some of your accolades. You have an AV preeminent rating from Martindale-Hubbell, and you were named one of the top estate planning attorneys in the country by Worth magazine. Can you tell us a little bit about the significance of the AV preeminent rating and the top 100 mentioned by Worth? That's amazing.
Yeah, we're really proud of that. The AV preeminent is limited to just the top % of attorneys, and it's actually based on our professionalism and ethics. I'm very well aware, obviously, that the lay public often feels like, a lot of attorneys are kind of slimy. And I'm very proud of the fact that my peers have, felt that, we represent the highest, possible ethics and professionalism that there is out there in the practice of law. And then, Worth magazine, I don't even know how they found me, frankly. And we actually got that 2 years in a row where we were nominated as one of the top 100 attorneys in the country. We do have a national practice and we do a lot of marketing nationally. We're very proud of that, and whether I'm in the top 100, top 500, doesn't really matter to me. I think we're one of the best at what we do, because, again, when you work with us, you can have the peace of mind of knowing that, at least based on our history, that your documents are not going to get overturned by anybody, and and we're true experts at what we do. This is all I've done for 30 years. There's a lot of estate planners out there that used to be bankruptcy attorneys or personal injury attorneys, litigators, and they call themselves estate planners, but they really don't have the breadth of knowledge and experience that we have,
Absolutely. Well, Todd, this has been a fantastic conversation. If anybody out there could use your help, could use the help of Wealth Planning Law Group, where can the people find you?
So you can always go to our website, www.lawealthplan.com. That's LAWEALTHPLAN. Or you can call our toll-free number, which is 1-833-USA-WEALTH. So WEALTH. So 833-USA-WEALTH is our main office number.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Adrian. I really appreciate it. If we can help anybody, please give us a call.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Partnerships for Profit presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Todd, thank you again.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.